Russia launched a massive attack on Ukraine of 521 drones and missiles a day before Wednesday's trilateral peace talks in Abu Dhabi.
Police authorities in Germany have announced the arrest of 2 people for acts of sabotage on naval ships in the port of Hamburg. The stepson of Norway's Crown Prince, Marius Borg-Høiby, has pleaded not guilty to rape charges as he went on trial on Tuesday for multiple offences.
Russia launched one of its biggest airstrikes on Ukraine overnight into Tuesday, mainly targeting homes and power plants. The attack was made up of 450 drones and 70 missiles, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He also urged for more air defense ahead of US-brokered peace talks in Abu Dhabi on Wednesday. The aerial assault focused on Ukraine's power grid as part of Moscow's campaign to deny civilians of electricity, heating and running water during the coldest winter in years as temperatures drop as low as -20 degrees. On Tuesday morning, Kyiv residents were busy clearing up after strikes damaged and set fire to residential buildings, a kindergarten and a petrol station.
І такий залп, наче вогонь, і вікно просто вилітає. У мене, слава Богу, вціліло вікно, але у сусідів половини просто вилітали всі вікна. Це дуже страшно. Тут взагалі будинку немає, сюди немає.
Thermal power plants operated by DTEK, Ukraine's largest energy company, were hit for a 9th time since October. Kyiv, Kharkiv, Odessa, Sumy and Vinnytsia were among the most heavily hit regions in the attacks, which left at least 10 people injured. Meanwhile, talks between the US, Russia and Ukraine in Abu Dhabi are scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday, yet an agreement appears distant despite Washington's ongoing push.
Authorities in Germany say they have arrested a 37-year-old Romanian and a 50-year-old Greek accused of committing acts of sabotage against German Navy property in the port of Hamburg. As reported by the daily newspaper Bild, the arrests were made in Hamburg and in a village in Greece. According to the report, the 2 men allegedly manipulated several smaller warships, so-called corvettes, that were located at the shipyard. They are also accused of damaging freshwater pipes, removing fuel tank caps, and disabling fuse switches for the onboard electronics. The German Navy currently has 5 corvettes, all of which are of the new and high-tech Braunschweig class.
Sweden and Denmark will jointly procure mobile anti-aircraft artillery systems worth €245 million for Ukraine as the country experienced one of its worst nights of overnight attacks. Sweden will contribute $199 million and Denmark the remainder to supply Ukraine with a mobile anti-aircraft artillery system. The 2 countries' defense ministers said in a press conference.
Well, we see that Russia has been stepping up its long-range strike capabilities across the whole of Ukraine. On a daily basis, we are met with the news that civilians are dying due to the Russian brutality. This is a very important element of force protection for the civilian population. I hope also it will increase the resilience of the Ukrainian people, which I think has been very inspiring to follow.
The system was developed at record pace and adapted based on battlefield lessons from Russia's all-out war in Ukraine, Johnson said. The donation would be sufficient for Kyiv to establish its own air defense battalion. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly asked his allies to help strengthen the country's air defenses. Meanwhile, NATO chief Mark Rutte was in Kyiv alongside Zelensky to honor the country's fallen soldiers. Rutte laid a memorial candle at a monument dedicated to Ukraine's war dead as air raid sirens sounded across the capital.
The stepson of Norway's Crown Prince pleaded not guilty to rape charges as he went on trial on Tuesday for multiple offences, opening weeks of proceedings in a case that has rocked Norway's royal family. Marius Borg Høiby is the eldest son of Crown Princess Mette-Marit from a previous relationship and the stepson of the heir to the throne, Crown Prince Haakon. The 29-year-old, who holds no royal title or official duties, stood while the prosecutor read out the 38 counts against him at the Oslo District Court, asking him if he pleaded guilty, to which he replied no to each of the most serious charges, including 4 counts of rape. The charges also include abuse in a close relationship against one former partner, acts of violence against another, drug possession, death threats, and traffic violations. Prosecutors have said that he could face up to 10 years in prison if convicted in the trial, which is scheduled to last until 19 March.
Lawmakers at the European Parliament are struggling to find a compromise position on the design of the digital euro, according to 3 sources. Rapporteur Fernando Navarrete made a new proposal on the concept of the digital euro, calling it e-cash. That model would be used only for offline payments and as a tokenized digital form of cash, without granting users retail accounts on the European Central Bank ledger. By contrast, the Socialists and Democrats and Renew Europe support the European Commission's proposal, with users holding retail accounts on the ECB's ledger and using the digital euro both online and offline. A vote on the file is expected in May at the European Parliament's plenary session, but divisions between legislators could thwart its passage.
Day 1 at the World Governments Summit here in Dubai, and the big question, the big issue permeating the conference, but really the entire region, is whether or not a military conflict, a military escalation can still be avoided between the United States and Iran. And today we heard from one of the most influential voices in the Gulf, and that is Dr. Anwar Gargash. He was for many years the man who led the diplomatic efforts from the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, and today he told this conference that there is still time for Iran to return to dialogue. A conflict, he said, can still be avoided, and the authorities in Tehran, the regime, should really focus on engaging in dialogue with the United States, potentially all the way to cutting a nuclear deal. He said a regional conflict would only create more instability. Now, that's for the geopolitics, but also we focus today on trade and the economy. We spoke on Euronews with Matthias Korman. He is the head of the OECD, and he told us, despite the very difficult politics, the geopolitics and conflict becoming now more of a permanent feature in relations across the world, he suggested there is still appetite for win-win when it comes to trade. And he said he also believes the multilateral trade system, despite the tariffs put forward by the U.S. government last year, is still standing strong. Countries are now, quote, learning to adjust.
Mario Draghi is an exceptional leader, policy thinker, and I think that everybody would be well advised to listen very carefully to.
So you say
what
listen to his
say.
message.
It's not really for me to give advice to the European Union on this point, but when I think that Mario Draghi is somebody that everybody would be very well advised to listen to very carefully.
From the OECD and trade, we move now to Latin America, because we also spoke with the president of Paraguay, Santiago Peña. He's also the head of the rotating presidency of the Mercosur, and he implored once again the Europeans to get the Mercosur deal up and going, to really implement it.
Estamos trabajando para que así sea, y nosotros queremos que Paraguay sea el primer país en implementarlo.
¿Y de no ser el caso, lo consideraría un fracaso?
A ver, va a ser el desafío más que nada en la Unión Europea. Yo entiendo que la Comisión tiene las herramientas legales que en casos anteriores ya se había usado, ¿verdad? Y hay acuerdos que se han implementado de manera transitoria por los últimos 10 años. Así que nada impediría que se pueda implementar este acuerdo.
Remember, at the start of the year, finally, the EU Commission and the Mercosur, which includes, of course, Paraguay, but also Brazil and Argentina, finally signed the deal. The question is whether or not it can be implemented quickly. The European Parliament has said they do not think that's a good idea. They want a delay, and they now have reached out to the European Top Court for advice. The president of Paraguay telling us there are, quote, a lot of stereotypes when it comes to Latin America in Europe, and the best way forward now to really get this deal up and running. That's it for day 1, and I'm Maria Tadeo here at the World Governments Summit for Euronews.
Former president of the European Central Bank, Mario Draghi, said that Europe must turn itself into a genuine federation to avoid decline and deindustrialization. The remarks were made as the former Italian Prime Minister addressed students at the Belgian KU Leuven University on Monday after receiving an honorary degree.
Europeans alone have the option to become a genuine power themselves. So we must decide. Do we remain merely a large market subject to the priorities of others? Or do we take the steps necessary to become one power? Grouping together small countries doesn't automatically produce a powerful bloc. This is a future in which Europe risks becoming subordinated, divided, and deindustrialized at once. And a Europe that cannot defend its interests will not preserve its values for long.
Draghi said the world's current realities involve less trade and weaker rules, a model which benefits those with power and leverage. He said the U.S., for the first time, as evident by their foreign policy under U.S. President Donald Trump, sees European political fragmentation as serving its interests. Draghi proposed a federal model under which the EU can avoid being, quote, picked off one by one for its greater good. The former central bank chief stressed that so long as the EU operates on a member state basis, achieving power and competing on the global stage will prove difficult.